Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Anne, but I also go by my nickname Nini. I like to focus on Midwest true crime because I'm a Minnesota farmer's daughter. Today we're going to go to Ohio and talk about the disappearance of a woman that is still unsolved to this day. This was requested by Sad Lad, so thank you very much for the suggestion. This is one of those cases where it's pretty obvious who did it. There's just not enough evidence to charge that person. Patricia Adkins, known as Patti, was born on May 4th, 1972, and was the youngest of 5 siblings. She grew up in Marysville, Ohio, which has a population of about 22,000 and is not far from the big city of Columbus. After graduating high school, Patti started working for the local Honda plant. She was very dedicated to her job and eventually made her way up to an assembly line supervisor. She was briefly married and gave birth to her daughter, McKaylee, but got divorced. She and her ex-husband remained on good terms though. Patti was a very independent woman. She wasn't someone who needed a man in her life or material possessions. Her daughter was the most important thing in her life. In 2001, Patti was 29 years old and she had a happy life with her daughter, who was now 7. She was up for a promotion at work. She also had a secret. For the past 3 years, Patti had been having an affair with a married coworker. This man's name has never been released by police or anyone else of authority. Patti's friends and family know his name, but in interviews they have not said his name. While researching this case, I did come across a name and I was gonna use it, but since he hasn't officially been named, I thought I better not. This man worked on a different line at the Honda plant than Patti, but they started to talk to each other casually and it quickly grew to an intimate relationship. Like I said, this man was married and he had children, but I want to stress that Patti did nothing wrong in this situation. She was not the married one who was cheating on her spouse. This man told Patti he was going to leave his wife for her, and I know that makes you roll your eyes because it never happens when a married man says he's going to leave his wife for his mistress. Patti was madly in love with him, so she believed him. Again, we're not going to victim shame. We all can relate to being so in love with someone that you wear rose-colored glasses and don't see red flags. This man ran an auto repair shop as a side gig and told Patti he was worried about losing his half of that shop in a divorce because his wife owned the other half. He said if he could buy his wife's half, he could then divorce her and still keep his business. Patti cared about this man and she wanted to have a future with him, so she started giving him money. Patti was very financially stable. She had always been very good with money. She had saved up a large nest egg over the years. She started giving it to this man little by little until all of her savings had been given to him. She then took cash advances on her credit cards, cashed in stocks, took out a second mortgage, and gave him $25,000 from that. And she withdrew $30,000 from her 401k to give to him. All total, in about a year and a half, Patti gave this man about $90,000. Patti and this man tried to keep their relationship a secret, but she did tell one friend who she worked with and her 2 sisters. She told them he was married with children. Her sisters told her this was not a good idea, but Patti seemed happy. It sounds like she even referred to him as her soulmate. While visiting her sister Janine in Miami in July 2000, Patti bought a Hard Rock t-shirt and told Janine it was for her boyfriend. She eventually told both her sisters she was giving money to this man. Janine told Patti she didn't approve, but Patti insisted he would pay her back after the divorce. And again, Patti seemed happy, so Janine didn't push it. Her sister Marcia was a little more vocal. She asked Patti if she was crazy. She told her how she had worked hard all these years to save up all this money, but Patti was still optimistic. She did tell Marcia at the start of the summer of 2001 that he needed to start paying her back in July so she could put the money back into her 401k she had taken out and not get a penalty. The Honda plant where Patti worked had a shutdown week every year around the 4th of July so employees could spend time with their families. Patti's boyfriend asked her to go on a camping trip to Canada during that shutdown week. He said they would be going to a remote cabin so she couldn't bring a lot with her. Patti was thrilled. So far they had spent their time together hiding so they wouldn't get caught. They had only seen each other outside of work a handful of times. This would be the first time that they could get a chance to really be together. Patti looked at this trip as the beginning of their future together and felt he must really be serious about her if he wanted to take her on a week-long trip. Patti talked excitedly about this trip to her sisters and the friend who knew about this man. On Friday, June 29th, 2001, the last day of work before the shutdown week, Patti took her dog and cats to a kennel to be boarded. Her daughter was at her dad's house, and Patti's sister Marcia was going to pick her up on Wednesday and watch her until Patti returned on Sunday. Patti called Marcia and left a message saying she loved her and ended the message with something she usually said to her sister. "Kiss, kiss, I love my sis." Patti and her boyfriend planned to leave for Canada after their shift ended around midnight, so Patti rode to work with a coworker so her car wouldn't sit at the plant for a whole week. Her boyfriend gave a coworker rides to work, so the plan was for Patti to leave the plant first and hide under his tonneau cover on his pickup. Then her boyfriend and the coworker would come out and get in the pickup. After he dropped off the coworker, Patti would move to the front seat and they would head to Canada. Her sisters knew this was the plan and found it odd, but Patti thought it was fun and kind of exciting. Patti worked her shift, which was from 3:30 to midnight, and clocked out 19 seconds after midnight. Some people reported seeing her walk to the parking lot in her white Honda uniform, carrying a small teal duffel bag. Nobody heard from Patti after she left the Honda plant, but that was expected. They were going to be in a remote location, and this was a time before everyone walked around with a cell phone. Patti was supposed to pick up her daughter around noon on Sunday, July 8th at her sister Marcia's, but she never showed up. Marcia called Patti's house and she didn't answer, so she left a message. As the minutes turned into hours, Marcia kept calling but didn't get an answer. So around 2 p.m., she called the boyfriend's house. His wife answered and Marcia pretended to be an auto repair customer and asked if the man was there. She said he was not, so Marcia figured they must still be making their way back from Canada. A few hours went by and there was still no sign of Patti, so Marcia called this man's house again around 5 p.m. This time, the boyfriend answered. Marcia said, "I know you don't know me, but I'm Patti's sister. I know you were supposed to go away together for a week. Where's my sister?" He was like, "Patti? Patti from Honda? I don't know what you're talking about." Marcia hung up the phone, called her brother, and said, "Patti's dead." She said she just knew. When there was still no sign of Patti by 7 p.m., Marcia called Marysville police and reported her sister missing. Marcia couldn't sleep that night because she was worried. Wide awake at 3 a.m., she called this man again and flat out asked him if he killed Patti. He denied it. Marcia said, "I know she's been giving you money and I know you were in a relationship." He again said they were just co-workers, but asked why Marcia thought otherwise. His wife was nearby and wanted to know why Marcia thought he had killed Patti. According to Marcia, both this man and his wife were calm. The wife did not sound upset at all. If you received a call in the middle of the night saying your husband is having an affair with a coworker, what woman would be calm about that? All this man and his wife did was ask questions, and Marcia said in hindsight, she wonders if they might have been trying to find out how much Marcia knew. Police searched Patti's house and found no sign of disturbance. Her car was in the garage. Police considered the possibility that Patti left on her own and basically ran away. Nobody other than the police considered that possibility for one reason: Patti's daughter. Michaela meant the world to Patti, so there was no way she would leave her behind. Nothing in Patti's life indicated a motive to run away. She had a great job and was up for a promotion. She had great relationships with friends and family. Police talked to her coworkers and they said on that last shift, Patti had been adamant she wanted everything cleaned up by midnight so they could leave as soon as possible. And she was one of the first people to clock out that night. That was rare because Patti was usually one of the last people to leave work. They said how they often saw Patti talking to a coworker, that boyfriend, but didn't think much of it because as a supervisor, Patti frequently talked to other workers and they didn't seem to be flirting with each other. But Patti's sisters and that one friend who knew the truth told police they had been seeing each other but trying to keep it quiet since he was married. Her sisters also told police how Patti had given this man a lot of money. On July 10th, police talked to this man. He said he knew Patti from work, but that was it. He said he never accepted any money from her and they had made no plans to go to Canada. He told police he clocked out around midnight and on the way home, he and the coworker he gave rides to went through a Burger King drive-thru. He then dropped the coworker off and got home around 2:30 a.m. His wife verified he got home at that time. He said it took so long to get home because they had to wait in line at Burger King for 45 minutes. Police talked to the manager of that Burger King. He looked up transactions from that night and found there was only $18 worth of purchases between midnight and 1:30 a.m. They had not been busy. The manager said at most he would have had to wait in line for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. When police talked to the guy he gave a ride to, he said the same thing, that they waited in line at Burger King for 45 minutes. On July 13th, they searched his home and auto repair business. Police found evidence in his house of a relationship with Patti. They found that Hard Rock t-shirt she had given him, and they found a letter she had written to him talking about their relationship. They brought cadaver dogs out, and they alerted to some freshly poured concrete near the garage. This man's wife said it was leftover concrete from a project he worked on during shutdown week. Police dug it up with a backhoe but found nothing. Police gave this man a polygraph test. They didn't flat out say he failed it, but they said it showed he was being deceptive. They could find evidence of Patti withdrawing large sums of money when they looked into her financial records, but when they looked into this man's financial records, there was no evidence of the $90,000 that Patti had given him. When police looked at his pickup, they noticed it had stuff for a tonneau cover to attach to the truck bed, but the cover wasn't on it. He told them he bought a new tonneau cover and installed it on June 29th, but removed it a few days later, rolled it up, and set it aside. Police were like, that's kind of odd. Why would you remove it just days after installing it? Police took the tonneau cover and forensically examined it. On August 3rd, the crime lab contacted police and said they found a speck of blood on the underside of the tonneau cover and some cat hairs. They sent the cat hairs that were found on the tonneau cover and hair samples from Patti's cats to a lab in Texas that worked with animal DNA. Those hairs matched one of Patti's cats. Now, that doesn't mean Patti's cats were necessarily in the back of the truck. I'm a cat mom, and any cat parent will tell you, if you own a cat, you have cat hair on everything. So it's likely Patti had cat hair on her, and then when she was in the back of the truck, the hairs came off onto the tonneau cover. Police feel it places Patti in the back of the truck around the time she disappeared, since the tonneau cover had only been on the truck for a few days. The speck of blood was troublesome because it was a very tiny speck, and the crime lab said if they tested it, it would take up the entire sample, and there would be nothing left for further testing. They also said because it's such a tiny sample, they might not even get any definite DNA results even if they did test it. The prosecutor decided to wait to test it and hope that as years passed and DNA technology advanced, they might be able to test it and get a definitive result without destroying the entire sample. In 2017, a detective said they were getting closer to being able to test it, but from my understanding, as I'm recording this in 2023, they still have not tested that blood. A few months after Patti disappeared, McKaylee asked Marcia if her mommy was dead. Marcia told her she felt mommy was in heaven because that would be the only thing that would keep her from her daughter. Marcia said in 2016, quote, "I don't have any hope that my sister's alive. I knew when she didn't return that she was not alive, but I have hope that justice will happen, that someone will be held accountable for her death. I really hope someday a puzzle piece is found that will close this case and finally bring Patti some justice." Unquote. Anna Garcia, who I love, went to this man's auto repair business in 2019 with Crime Watch Daily to ask about Patti, but he refused to talk to her.
We want to talk to you about Patti. What happened to
I
Patti?
was told not to discuss any of this. You need to talk to my lawyer.
But what can you tell us? You're the last...
I can't tell you nothing, I'm sorry.
But you're the last one to have seen her alive.
I do think Patti is unfortunately no longer alive, and she was probably killed that night of June 29th, 2001, and her body was disposed of. I do think her boyfriend had something to do with it. That's just my opinion. I don't think he was ever going to leave his wife for Patti, and when Patti told him he needed to start paying the money back, he decided to just get rid of her instead. I think his wife knew all about it, and that was why she didn't sound upset when Marcia called her. I also wonder if the coworker who got a ride home from this man is lying for him or was involved, since he told police they were in line for 45 minutes at Burger King, but the manager said that was unlikely. Now, I'm not a legal expert at all, but I think they have enough to charge this man based on circumstantial evidence. The case against Scott Peterson is mostly based on circumstantial evidence, and he was found guilty. It's no doubt harder to try someone for murder when you do not have a body, and in Patti's case, her body has not been found yet. And you always hear police and prosecutors say you only get one chance to try someone for a crime, so they probably want to have as strong of a case as possible before they arrest this man. I think it's just a matter of waiting for DNA technology to advance so that speck of blood can be tested. Police have labeled Patti's case a homicide and not a missing persons. Patti was declared legally dead in 2006. McKaylee is now an adult. She was raised by Patti's sister. She is a very smart cookie. She got a PhD in behavioral neuroscience, and she's very well spoken. She talked to Crime Watch Daily about her mother.
My mom died at 29 years old. I'm 23 right now and I can't imagine. I just know to not take life for granted.
Marcia said Patti had an infectious laugh, and so many years have gone by now that she can't remember her sister's laugh, and she misses that. Marcia described not knowing what happened to her sister as a crushing pain, and it feels like someone is squeezing your heart and won't let go. It's so unfair to family and loved ones when they don't get justice for the murder of someone they love. It has to be 10 times worse when you are probably sure you know who the killer is, but there's just not enough evidence to arrest him. To watch them walk around and get to live their life when your sister was robbed of hers and her daughter had to grow up without a mother, it's frustrating. It's easy to see the red flags from an outsider's view, but we all have been infatuated with someone at some point in our lives, and that has led us to overlook things and make bad decisions. All Patti wanted was to be in a relationship with a man she loved. She was so excited to go on this trip to Canada and had all this hope and joy, and it was probably taken from her minutes after leaving the Honda plant that night. If you know anything about Patti's disappearance, you can call the Marysville Sheriff at 937-645-4126. You can also contact Central Ohio Crime Stoppers at 614-461-TIPS or go to www.stopcrime.org. That's all I have for this case. I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.